on out. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. There he is, Justin Morelli. How you doing? Another shot clock. How you
What's
doing?
up, guys? How we doing? Thanks for having me today.
Oh
What's
man,
going
we're
on,
doing
man?
good. We're doing good. Appreciate you taking out the time. So listen, grew up a Knicks fan,
Yep.
right? Huge Knicks fan. Last season was good, right? Last season, I think that we could have done better. I think they could have beaten Indiana, but it's all right. They learned a lot of different stuff. But this year, for me, I'm excited about this year for the Knicks. It looks like it is, they have a you don't have a clear, Celtics changed their roster. Of course, you have Cleveland that's going to be up there. People are looking at Orlando, looking at Milwaukee. But New York, I mean, they got to be one of the favorites. But let me know what do you think? Where do you see this season going for the Knicks?
So I totally agree with you, first off. But to me, I think it's a little by default because of the Eastern Conference. Like, I think the Knicks are a very good team. I
Okay.
don't think they're a great team. But I think with this NBA, the way it is this year with the East, with the Celtics without Tatum, with the Pacers without Halliburton, obviously, you have the Hawks and the Magic got better, but you got to integrate new guys into a system and on a team. And sometimes that takes a year, could take a half year to do. So I think the Cavs are the clear team that you would be going against. And the Knicks match up pretty well against them to begin with. So I think the Knicks have a chance. This has got to be the year. Like, I heard some guys talking about yesterday that the Cavs have more of a do or die year than the Knicks do. I totally disagree with that. The Cavs last
Yeah.
year lost to the Pacers because Garland didn't play in the first two games and Mobley didn't play in the third game. So that was a big reason. And then they tossed away the second game. Obviously the Pacers had a lot of those during the playoffs, but I think the Knicks, this is their team. They had the same team last year. They made their bench better. Their bench is actually a strength this year. It was a weakness last year. They bring in a coach, excuse me, who is a good offensive coach. He proved that in Sacramento. He's been a defensive coach early in his career with Cleveland. He's kind of the guy that the opposite of Thibodeau, meaning playing your full team, communicating with the roster, playing a free-flowing offense where the ball moves. That's what the Knicks wanted. That's what we feel like as fans, as Knicks contingent. They were missing last year. That's why they didn't win to go to the finals, right? But if we're just being honest, the Knicks were lucky to beat Boston last year. I'm just gonna keep it real. Like, I'm a Knicks fan.
I don't know about luck. Why you say they were lucky? I thought that they outplayed Boston. Now, yeah, okay, Boston had some nicks and bruises, but so did the Knicks. The Knicks were only playing 7 people.
Look,
So they had a lot of
look,
bruises too.
right? Etan, I love you, first of all. One of the first OGs of Syracuse, part of the reason I went to Syracuse, right? And then
That's what's
I
up.
was at Syracuse when Devo was there. But look, to me, the first two games of that series, Boston up 20 going into the fourth quarter of two games. That's a once in 100 games you come back and win those, and the Knicks did it twice. If they only do it once, the Knicks lose that series, in my opinion. So to say they outplayed them in game four. They outplayed them without Tatum in game six. But I think that series, Boston was the better team. Don't take anything away from the Knicks. I give them credit for coming back, and that's part of the game. They won the game fair and square. But if I'm looking to this year, I think the Knicks have a very good team. I think with the Celtics being down, the Pacers being down, the Cavs are their kind of main kind of competition. They have a chance to get to the finals, but I don't love this roster because I think Devo knows this as a two guard. They don't really have a two guard. And to me, I know this positionless basketball in 2025, but in terms of the speed of the game, the way the two guard moves, last year they played Hart, OG, and Bridges together. They're all forwards. None of those guys are guards. Okay. And I think the lack of shooting in that lineup hurt them. Because with Brunson and Towns, they're your two best shooters, but they're also the guys who are going to have the ball. You need guys who can shoot. Devo knows this he had the ball when he was at Syracuse, right? You need those guys like Andy Routens, like those players that can spot up and hit a three when you get doubled, when that calls for it. And I think that's the part with the Knicks. They're going to start Mitch this year probably. Okay, we'll see how that goes, but I worry about the shooting, which is why I made a hot take and everyone went crazy on me when I said Deuce should start at the two. I don't think he's a perfect option, but I think he's at least the best option to bring that shooting to the lineup. I'm concerned about that. But last thing I would say, with this East, it might not matter. I think the Knicks have a chance to get to the finals because of the East more so than I think the team being great.
Okay, before I kick it to you, Devo, I got to go back to something you said. about them not outplaying Boston. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, hit me.
They're 3-4, but not okay. Do you not have to outplay somebody in order to be able to come back from 20 points down, especially mostly in the fourth quarter? You have to outplay them. You have to be able to kick into a whole different gear, whether it was adjustments. They had one time where Towns just kept driving, and whatever adjustments they made, they outplayed them down the stretch, and it was really so. A lot of people say, that the Knicks didn't beat them, Boston beat themselves, or Boston lost it, and I can't agree with that, because if they wouldn't have been able to outplay them, they wouldn't be able. It's hard to come back from 20 points down in the playoffs.
That's for sure.
The caliber of Boston, so to do it twice. I got to give them their flowers. I got to say they outplayed them.
I'm not giving them their flowers. I just want to say this for all the Knicks fans, because I don't want them to come on and hate me after this episode. I'm not saying that. The Knicks deserve to win. What I'm saying is the process of that. That's not a repeatable process. So this year, right, they won last year. But going into this year, they're going to have to play better, because remember, they could have lost to Detroit too. One of those plays goes a different way in that series. They're out in the first round. So now, you give them credit. They got to the conference finals, but let's not act like this is the Celtics, who had been there 2 years in a row, consistently getting to the conference finals. This Knicks team still has a lot to prove to me this year. And this is the year without the Celtics, without the Pacers. You better do it this year, because if they don't do it this year, I think you're going to see drastic changes within the roster after this year.
Really? Devo, what you got?
Well, I'm looking at Jordan Clarkson. I mean, I think he's the guy that he could be a big piece. You talked about they don't have any shooting. He's a guy that could add shooting. He could also take some of the ball handling duties off of Jalen Brunson, bring the ball up, and if they're willing to play Jalen Brunson off the ball, where he can do stuff off the ball. I mean, they have Cat. He's another guy who can shoot the ball, but Jordan Clarkson, in my mind, he's a key for this Knicks team, right? He's a guy who come in, could be the primary ball handler. You could play him off the ball with Jalen Brunson, right? You could have Josh Hart come off the bench. I don't know what they're planning on doing. Are they planning on starting Clarkson at the 2? You talked about that 2-guard position. He could be a guy who could fill in that 2-guard position. He's a scorer. He could shoot the ball. He's a solid defender. I mean, is he a great defender? Not a great defender, but he could can keep guys in front of him. So I think Jordan Clarkson is a guy who could take a lot of pressure off, not only Brunson, but Cat as well, as far as the scoring duties go. He's a guy that can go off for 30 in a game.
Yeah,
right?
So, for sure. And I think that's a great point. I think what I'm hearing from inside the Knicks is they're going to start Mitch to start the season. That's what it seems like to me at the center. Now, he's got injury restrictions. He's already, kind of banged up right now, and they want to make sure he gets through the season. He's had an injury history, so he's not going to start every game. Right. So I think it's kind of going to be a trial by fire, whether it's Hart, whether it's Deuce, whether it's Clarkson, like you mentioned. I think they'd rather have Clarkson be that scorer off the bench that takes the load off of Jalen. And that doesn't mean he can't play with him down the stretch. Right. And you know this. It doesn't matter who starts. It matters more who finishes. Right. Like I think we had teams where, Dion Waiters didn't start, but he finished every game because he was the closer. So for this Knicks team, I think they're going to mix and match a lot of different things. And I think that's what's great about Mike Brown. And I think what I'm excited to see, because maybe he's going to change my whole mindset of this Knicks ceiling based on what he brings from an offensive standpoint and how they move the ball. Because I think, like Devo said, you're going to see Jalen a lot more off the ball. You're going to see a lot more Steph Curry action with Jalen this year. Not that he's Steph Curry, but you're going to see more of that action where he's coming off screens, he's getting the ball on the move, coming off those picks where he can go downhill or he can pull back for the 3-ball. So I think you're going to see a lot of that this year with Jalen. I think it's going to maximize his ceiling. It's going to take some of that kind of load that he had to shoulder the last couple of years, which I don't think is sustainable for a small guard like that to stay healthy year after year. So I'm excited to see Mike Brown, and I agree with you on Clarkson, because I think the bench is going to be the biggest key. If they could outscore teams with their bench, and Clarkson specifically, and I love Yabusele too. I think that was a huge pickup. The French kid from the Sixers.
Big boy.
Huge pickup, big boy. Then they're going to, they're going to decide between Shamet and Garrison Matthews. One of those guys is going to be on the roster. And then obviously you got Josh and other guys. Their bench could be a big strength this year. And I think you're going to see that. We've seen regular seasons where if you have a good bench, with the way these teams manage their minutes, that could win you 5 to 10 extra games in the regular season.
And Justin, I think real quick, the regular season, obviously Clarkson, he's going to kind of, find his way in the regular season. But when the playoffs come, that's really where it's going to be beneficial for the Knicks, right? Because you saw in the playoffs that a lot of the load was just put on Brunson. Like, all right, give him the ball and score it, right?
And he's cold-blooded, Clarkson too. He's cold-blooded.
Absolutely, but you saw in the playoffs a lot. It was boom. It was box.
Yeah.
Like they were just waiting for Brunson to go ahead and then like you said, when you kicking it to a guy who's a non-shooter, it's tough. They were just playing off of Josh Hart, right? And then they were just daring him to shoot the ball. When you insert Clarkson, he's a guy who could put Josh Hart into where he could go get these rebounds. Now he's not playing so far away from the rim. Clarkson is there now. Insert Josh Hart. He's getting offensive rebound. He's getting second, third chance opportunities. So. The regular season, yes, but more so in the playoffs when you see the defenses start to shift. You're playing against, teams, 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row, whatever it is, and the scout report goes out the window. Now you need a guy who could really play make, and he's going to take a lot of pressure off of Brunson in that area, in my mind.
I agree, and I think you saw that really in game 1 of the playoffs last year with Cam Payne, who's not on the level of Clarkson, right?
Exactly.
He won game 1 or game 2. It might have been game 2. I don't remember which one. Whichever one they were down by like 10 in the fourth quarter, he basically won that game for them off the bench. So Clarkson can do that times 5. What Cam Payne could do. So I agree with you. And one thing I'm mad at myself, I wish I would have brought this up earlier, and Devo brought it up, and I'm going to kind of go off it, but with them not guarding Josh Hart. That was my concern going into this season, which is why I made the Deuce comment, because if you start Mitch or you start Hart, those guys are not offensive threats. So with the way McHale shot last year, now hopefully he can get better this year because his shooting last year was an issue. And with OG, who's a pretty good shooter, he's not an elite shooter. So you have 3 guys on the court, and with Josh, that center is just going to guard Josh. And what happened to Towns in the second half of last year, if you paid attention, is they started putting their center on Josh and putting their wing on Towns. And that took Towns completely off his elite ceiling, what he was in first half of the season. Because what Towns does best, he is not a post-up player. He can do it, but that's not the strength of his game. The strength of his game is facing up the three-point line. And if he's got a center on him, if they play off, he's going to put it in your eye hole. And if they come up on him and play up, he's going to put it on the deck and he's going to go around him. He's going to get a basket or he's going to get an N1. That's what he does best. But when you put a wing on that guy, he doesn't have the foot speed to go around him. So then they're just going to check him at the top, play up at his chest, and then it takes away the things that he really loves to do, and the Knicks need him as that second scorer. Jalen's going to do his thing, right? The Knicks need to maximize Towns to where he is the elite scorer he was earlier in last season, and that's the one question mark I have. Is the coach going to draw is it going to be schematic, where he's going to draw some plays up and kind of figure that out? Or is it going to be a lineup thing where, like you said, Devo, they got to have more shooting out there to make sure that center does not play, Josh or sag off of Josh or just stay in the paint and not guard Mitch?
Now, too, but Justin, now with Cat, and I understand like he's more of a perimeter oriented big, but you do have to find scenarios where you put him in the mid post because he can score there too. Face up, jab, go, and if he's playing on the perimeter the whole time, he's not going to get anyone foul trouble, right? You got to be able to try to be aggressive to the rim. That's just going to open up the perimeter even more. So I think you got to find ways where you can incorporate both. You don't want to fall. And I heard this all the time. And E, tell me if I'm wrong. Like Rasheed Wallace, right? And sometimes they'd say Rasheed would just fall in love with the perimeter. But every time that he got in the mid post, he could face up and go by because he was quicker than those guys. He was more athletic. So it has to be a little mix of the inside out. I think that just be more beneficial for the team.
And I think to your point, that's what I was saying about coaching. What Mike Brown did a lot in Sacramento, even though Sabonis and Towns are not exactly the same player, they have some similarities from that mid post. They both are. Towns a better passer than people give him credit for. From that mid post, he was able to play make from there and either use that kind of area. And I think Brown's going to do that with Towns more. Obviously, they didn't really do that with Towns at all last year. So to your point, maybe that's an area that they kind of focus on, as Towns in that mid post as a playmaker. And one thing Cat can do that Sabonis couldn't do, Cat's an elite perimeter shooter. So you cannot leave him and sag off, from a playmaking standpoint. They're gonna have to play up on him, which might open up some things for his teammates. So I agree with you. I think you're gonna see more of that with this new coach.
Much more space. Are you okay? Because one thing that I do hear from a lot of Knicks fans, a few, I guess, Tibbs loyalists, they're still not happy that he was fired. Yeah. They question the move. That's been the first time since the Knicks have made the Eastern Conference Finals since the Knicks played against Reggie Miller and them. In that final. So it's been a long time, but Are you okay with the change, and what does Mike Brown bring that will differ than what Thibodeau brought to the team?
Look, I was in favor of it, right? Even as a Knicks loyalist, and I appreciate what Tibbs did for the team. Like, he obviously, you can't argue with what he did over the 5 years. The team was a disaster. It was a nightmare for the 20 years, aside from one Carmelo season. They were a disaster, and he came in and he made them a legitimate look. Giannis wants to come to the Knicks. That should tell you all you need to know. How many years did the Knicks try to get the best player to even want to take a meeting with them? Right? LeBron barely even took a meeting. So Tibbs has gotten them to this point of respectability where they're a perennial playoff team. They're a threat in the East to not only win multiple series, but now go to the finals. And I give him all the credit for that. But I think he's the type of coach that he's a regular season coach. And his ceiling is that of win a round or two in the playoffs, and that's it. It's kind of like the Mark Jackson thing that happened in Golden State, in my opinion. They bring Steve Kerr in, and he maximizes the roster, and they end up going on and obviously winning multiple championships. I think it's a similar thing with Tibbs. I think it was time for him to go. I think we saw last year, and that was my point about not the luckiness of the wins in the first two series, but that was not like the Knicks came out and pounded their way to the conference finals. That was a kind of one play here and there, and I think if they had a better coach that fit this team, they would have done better. And I think Tibbs is the type of coach, he needs the right roster. This roster with Towns at center, a power forward, that's not the roster for him. He needs a defensive roster that he can just go out and say, okay, this is the team I like to coach, and that's that, right? So I think Mike Brown, what he's going to do is he's going to be much more kind of versatile with his coaching style. He's going to open it up a little bit. He's going to be willing to play guys, and if they don't succeed, it doesn't mean we just bench them. And I think, not to bring this up because I love Coach Boeheim, but that was to me his biggest problem. Once someone made a mistake, he's on the bench and he's never coming back. And you got to build guys' confidence up, not tear them down. I think that was, out of all the great things Boeheim did, that was my only complaint, was I felt like sometimes he had a quick hook with certain guys, and Tibbs kind of was similar like that. And I think you have to be willing to play through some mistakes, especially in the regular season, because when you get to the playoffs and you got injuries, and then you got to go, oh my God, wait, I gotta play this guy. I gotta play Alec Burks at the back of my bench. Well, wait, I haven't played him in 2 months. What am I gonna get from this guy? They gotta be ready to go, and you're only gonna get that from playing against the Wizards in the regular season and playing against the Charlotte Hornets. You know what I'm saying? So not to Etan, my bad. That's a story. Not my bad. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's so key to build guys' confidence. Like, I didn't play sports the level you guys did, but I played throughout high school. I played basketball, and for me, I just know as an athlete, if you don't have confidence really in anything you do in life, it doesn't matter how gifted you are at that. You could get that, then you start questioning yourself. You start second guessing and thinking on the court. And once you're thinking on the court, you might as well go sit on your couch.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
100% true. All right, I got one more question for you, and I want you to touch on this. Take a second and think about it. But this is how I feel, and I'm not happy that it hasn't been done already. But it is way past time for the Knicks, for James Dolan, to make right whatever happened with Charles Oakley. I grew up watching Charles Oakley, grew up loving that team, grew up that whole era with Patrick Ewing and Larry Johnson and John Starks, Allen Houston, Sprewell, that whole time period, Anthony Mason, rest in peace. You know, I love that time period. Charles Oakley was the heart and soul of the Knicks. Okay? Whatever is going on with them, I feel that James Dolan, the Knicks organization, should have made it right a long time ago. What say you?
Well, first off, as a season ticket holder, you're trying to get me in some trouble here on this show. And I do not appreciate that. I do not appreciate that. But what I will say, without giving you too political of an answer so I can keep my seat, Mr. Dolan, I love you, Mr. Dolan. I love the Knicks, all right? I grew up in that time period too, right? Like that's one of the classic Knick teams. We all love that Knick team, and we'd all love to see Oak back at the Garden. I think we'd all love to see that. Now, for me, it's hard for me to speak on it when I don't really know what happened behind the scenes, right? Like, I don't know. Like, we all know between men, like, sometimes things happen even between families, and you got to try to work that stuff out. But if I'm speaking from, the street, I don't really know what's going on inside the room, and I don't know how deep it goes. I don't know who did what. So for me to say, okay, Oak should just come back in the Garden, I also heard one thing Oak said, which I didn't like. He kind of threw Ewing under the bus in his book for not being a leader for the Knicks. And I thought that was kind of like, listen, Ewing, you want to say whatever you want about Ewing. Ewing dragged those Knicks teams to the finals. Okay, those Knicks teams Oakley, I love Oakley. He made one All-Star team. All right, I love Starks. He made one All-Star team. Ewing was the man there. He had to
You're right.
shoulder all the blame. Every time anything went wrong, it was always on him. So I think I'd love to see Oak back. I didn't appreciate that he said that because I think when you're a team, you keep that stuff in-house. I'm sure you guys played and, you guys played on some really good teams. I'm sure there was some stuff inside that certain teammates did and you're like, you know what? I don't love this. But you didn't come out and talk in the media and say, you know what? Hey, this guy's a bum. We got to get rid of this guy. So I think from Oak's standpoint, I think it'll work out over time, but I also think he hasn't helped himself in the media with how he's reacted. You're not going to get Dolan. One thing about Dolan, and this is just kind of, I think, what any billionaire, they don't want to be told they're wrong, right? They don't want to be yelled at in the public. That's not the way to get back in the garden, regardless if you're right or wrong. Sometimes you just got to take it and you got to say, okay, what's the best way for me to get back in the garden? You're not going to win that battle. That guy's got $3 billion, $4 billion, whatever he's got. He owns the Knicks. So no matter what, you got to figure out, okay, how am I going to just stay under the radar, say some good things in the public, work it out, and then get back to the garden where I want to be because that's my team and that's where I grew up. And I think he could do a better job of that regardless of what happened in the media. So I think it's probably on both sides. I would love to see him back, but I don't know enough about what's going on inside to tell you, hey, this person's right or this person's wrong, and I want to keep my seat.
I got you. Well, let me just off a little bit because I have to, respectfully disagree on a few
go
things.
ahead.
I think that is somebody of Oakley's caliber. I think he was the heart and soul of the Knicks. I think there's a certain level of what he has accomplished that he should be a part of the organization. So, like when the Knicks didn't offer Patrick Ewing a job, after he wanted to get into coaching, that should not have happened.
I agree with that.
First person to that wanted to be able to work with the Knicks organization. I mean, any capacity, whatever capacity that they, So I mean, I think Oakley should have a statue in front of the garden. He meant that much.
He did.
So I just feel that, without even knowing any of the details, I think that somebody in the Knicks organization, whether it's James Dolan or anyone down, should make it right. Whatever that means. You know what I mean? And make it right now.
Well, let me say one thing to that. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to forget my comment. Go ahead.
I got you. But Oakley feels that he was disrespected, and it was a very ugly scene. You know what I mean? Publicly, and the way that it was, that hurt my heart as a Knicks fan to see that happening. So just from that image being the image that was put out there, from the Knicks organization, I think it should be more of, a handout or more urgency to want to rectify that because of what Oak meant to the entire organization.
I agree with you on that. The one thing I would say is think about a similar situation with a player that was on the Knicks that had an atrocious fallout with Mr. Dolan. His name was Latrell Sprewell, where he was cursing at him and screaming at him in the middle of the game when he was on Minnesota, yelling at him on the bench. Now he's the mayor of the Garden. He's back there. He's sitting front row. So obviously everything could be worked out. We don't know what happened there, but you couldn't have done that. Talk about public, kind of a show in public, right? Like that was as bad as it gets, like almost as bad as Oak. So I think they mended those fences. Sprewell kind of handled that internally a different way. They're going to have to come kind of together and have a meeting. I agree with you on what happened at the Garden. Nobody wanted to see that. I'm not condoning that at all, right? Like I'm not. But it's also hard for me to say like the Knicks have done right a lot of times by their alumni. Look at all their alumni who are at the Garden. Larry Johnson, John Starks works for the team. Ewing's now back all the time. And I agree, he should have gotten a job when he left the team. But, time has passed. They've now kind of mended that. Sprewell's there. All the Carmelo's at every game. Obviously, it's Carmelo, but,
my guy Wilson Chandler.
Wilson Chandler's at the games, right? Like I sat behind Baron Davis one game, right? Like so the Knicks have been very good. Once a Knick, always a Knick. They have done that. So what happened with Oak? Something must have happened internally that I don't think we kind of know the full details about. Maybe you do. You're closer to that situation than I am. Maybe something happened there that was really bad that's going to take time. I can tell you just personally, and, Mom, don't get mad at me for this, but my mom and her brother were in a feud for 10 years, and they didn't talk. And I had no idea why. Now they mended the fences, and we're all family, and we're doing great again. It's great, and life is too short for that stuff. So I agree. You're better off mending the fences, but sometimes we just don't really know what happens, and it just takes one person to come out and say, okay, let's make a phone call. Let's get this right, and let's get him back there. We all want to see it, but it's hard for me to comment on it. Now, last thing, because I know I wanted to say something about Syracuse today. So before you get me out of here, give
All
me some Syracuse tee up.
Okay, all right. Well, what do you think?
Because I'm excited about this year. I'm excited.
Yeah. No, this side we have Mellow Sun Cayenne is there. We have a Sadiq White who's a great freshman as well.
Yeah.
We have a completely different team than what was there last year. This is going to be a whole different type of a vibe, a whole different identity. They're athletic. They're going to get after it. The zone's going to look like how Syracuse fans kind of expect the zone to look. So we're excited about it. What are your thoughts on the Syracuse upcoming season?
I think this is a huge year, obviously. And I heard Devo talking about it a little before you brought me in, and I was listening in to you guys, and I thought you guys were making some great points. This is really the year for Coach Autry, right? Because first couple of years, you don't always have your team. It's kind of a leftover of Boeheim's team. He comes in, there's a lot of expectations, and the team didn't have a ton of talent at the beginning, a lot of young players, and now he's got a chance to get some of his own guys in. He's got some veteran guys like J.J. Starling, who's going to be one of the best players should be one of the best players in the country this year. You're coming off, like Devo said, I think 3 or 4 years in a row of not making the tournament, which for Syracuse is like 50 years, right? That's like, it's crazy to even think that's possible. So this is the year he's got to make it happen. Or I think they're probably going to make a change at the coaching position, whether you like it or not. And I think when you look at the talent, he should at least be able to get this team to the tournament, and they should be competitive in the tournament because, like I said, JJ, one of the best guards in the country. We all know college basketball. Ask Devo. It's a guards league, right? It's a guards thing. If you got great guard play, you always got a chance. JJ is going to be great. I love the transfer from Georgia Tech they're going to bring in. Nathan George, he's got a chance to be a big-time player this year. I really think an underrated piece is the shooter they brought in from Oregon State. I think his name is Nate Kings.
Yep.
He's a lefty. He can really fill it up. I think that's going to be a great addition. Then you bring in Donnie Freeman in his second year without the expectations of being a top 15 recruit. I look at him kind of, even though it's a terrible comparison, he reminds me of Wesley Johnson in his game a little bit. They need to work. Wesley was never great at putting it on the deck, which I think was his downfall in the NBA. He used that because he had a great talent around him at Syracuse, and it was fine. I think Donnie struggled with that last year, and I think if he gets a little more consistent with his outside shot, gets a little better at putting the ball on the deck, at his size, with his athleticism, he could be a huge force this year. And everything I'm hearing, and you guys would know this better than me, I'm hearing Sadiq White is turning heads in practice so far. So if you got that type of guy with his pedigree out of high school, the energy they talk about him bringing, then Cayenne, who's kind of a forgotten man, could just come in and kind of do his thing and kind of learn on the fly. I think this team, if one of those centers they're going to bring in, either the kid from UCLA or the freshman they're bringing in who they say good things about, one of those kids could be solid. I think this team is going to be very dangerous. And the one thing I would say, which Devo made a great point, this schedule is hard. Yeah. This schedule, because you got 4 easy games. And then you got, as Devo said, usually, Boeheim always did. He's like, let's play 15 easy ones. Then we'll get into the tough ones, right? You got 4 to get these kinks out with new guys. You're playing Houston. You're playing Kansas. You're playing Tennessee back to back to back, right? And this is not a Drake song, right? So this is back to back to back. We're talking about you're playing those 3 teams. And in the conference, the 3 best teams in the conference, you don't play one of them at home. Right. All 3 games are on the road.
Yeah.
Right.
North Carolina, Louisville, Duke are all road games. So you got to come out, like Devo said, they got to get at least one of those 3 out-of-conference games against Houston, Kansas, Tennessee. If they could get 2, they'll be set up.
Yeah.
Then they'll be set up. They got to get at least one of those because we all know how big the non-conference schedule is. They look back at that, especially the ACC's good, but it's not what it used to be of 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? Like, so you got to win some of those non-conference games. I think they have the talent to do it, but it's going to be a challenge because of how early those games are. Do you guys agree with that? How do you feel about that?
100%. Go ahead, Devo.
Yeah, no, I agree. We were talking about that just before you hopped on. To play those high-level teams that early on, usually you want to try to kind of find your flow as a team, your chemistry as a team. And, early on, all right, we make mistakes. We'll have a loss here or there. But now it's like you have to win those competitive games early on because then after that, you got Delaware State, you got Stonehill, you got Binghamton. So it's not really – and we talked about earlier, if you're not beating those teams by 30 and you're winning by like 9 or 8 or 9, it's not going to do much for you at all. So you have to win those games. If not, you got to go into ACC play and only win and only lose 3 games, right? And then you have to steal one of those games on the road, Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, whatever it is. If not, it's going to be hard to make the tournament because, like you said, the ACC is so top heavy.
Yep.
Right. That if you're getting those wins against the bottom, Boston College, I mean, Georgia Tech's probably not going to be great this year, but
yep.
those wins aren't going to mean as much, right? So it's not going to set you up for a great tournament resume. So you have to be able to get. I think it's 4 because they played St. Joe's as well. So St. Joe's,
yeah, St. Joe's good team. You're right. St. Joe's good team.
Win.
Yeah.
So if they can get 2 out of those 4. I think they're putting themselves in good position. But if they go even 1 or 0, man, it's going to be tough to even make the tournament. And that's early on, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have any more really good quality wins in non-conference at all if you can't get at least 2 of those. And then if you don't, you got to go and really try to run the table and come conference play, which is, we all know, it's hard to do.
Very difficult. And it's not what the Big East, when you guys played, right? And Devo, when you were in the Big East, I forgot which team. I think it was the team that you lost to Oklahoma in the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
When I read that was, I think you guys got hot at the end of that year, if I'm not mistaken. You had a kind of a rough start to the beginning. You played pretty well in the middle. And then at the end of the year, you played some good teams and you guys got hot. And I remember going into that tournament, everyone was like, yo, watch out for Cuse. This is one of those Boeheim Cuse teams. Because, you know, Boeheim always does his best when the team gets hot and they're kind of under the radar. So there's one of those Cuse teams that kind of gets hot and goes in the tournament. And that's what you guys did. But you're in the Big East. You're able to play at the end of the year some really quality teams.
Right.
Syracuse, like you said, and by the way, winning in college, you guys did this, I didn't. But on the road, it seems like no matter who you play, unless you're playing like DePaul from 2005, it's not an easy.
Hey, hold on. We got whooped on the road against DePaul.
Yeah, we did. We lost by like 39 one game. I remember that. But it's not an easy game, is my point, right? No matter who you're playing on the road, it's not easy. But you don't gain anything from those wins against those bad teams on the road. You got to beat.
Right.
You really got to beat some teams on the road, because even if you win, we've seen Syracuse teams in years past. I remember the John Gillen team when they beat Duke on that half-court shot.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't make the tournament yet that year, and they won 2 really good home games against top teams, but that wasn't enough. So you're going to have to win the non-conference games or the games on the road. Now, they do have the road games to win this year, but it's not easy, and you don't have as many games to make it up. You can't lose some of these and then say, you know what, we'll get them later in the year. Exactly. It's not going to be as easy.
Exactly. 100% correct.
Yeah.
Right. But hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I know we went over for a little bit of the time. I know you got another podcast coming up right after this. But hey, keep doing your thing. We're going to have you back on later on during the season. But no, and hey, I'm going to see you at Southern Knicks game, so I'm going to have to look for you.
Find me. I won't be hard to find. I want to say I really appreciate you guys having me on. You're 2 of my favorite players ever at Syracuse. Besides the fact you guys do a great job on this show and have done a great job in media, and Devo on the games, like 2 of my favorite people at Syracuse. And I'll actually be up there for Halloween weekend. So if you guys are there, let's link up. But I appreciate you guys having me on. I'd love to come back anytime, and good luck with the show and everything the rest of the way.
Sounds like a plan.
Appreciate you, man.